you all tonight?
What?
How do you feel? How are you all?
Decent.
You're feeling decent? Alright. So, we've been talking about rites and sacraments, right? How many sacraments are there?
2.
For our church?
2.
2! Very good question. Very good clarification. How many requirements do we observe for something to be a sacrament? 2. Cody, what is one of those?
It has to be commanded by Christ.
Okay. And it has to have a physical element. Here's a trick question. I haven't asked this one yet. So for baptism, when does Jesus tell us to go and baptize people? He does, actually. Because that's one of the requirements. He commands us, right?
Yeah.
It's part of the Bible. It's right near the end of his ministry, right before he's getting ready to go up on the cross and everything. It's called the Great Commission. And he stands there before the disciples and says, "Go and make disciples of all nations, baptizing them in the name of the Father, the Son, and the Holy Spirit."
What I was trying to say was that, like, he doesn't give us a specific time.
Oh, like when we should baptize people. I see what you're saying. You're right. Because when do we baptize kids?
Easter.
All year round, right? Do we baptize babies?
Yeah.
Yes. Some churches don't. Some churches wait till you're like your age, or teenagers, and be like, oh, they need to make that decision. Some churches don't baptize people till they're adults. We think God's gift is out there always, and so we baptize you as children. How many of you were baptized like as a baby, like less than a year old? Most of us. All of us. So, communion. When did Jesus command it? What was he doing when he commanded us to do communion? He was at the Last Supper, right? That was part of his instruction. As he's sitting there, they finished their meal, they finished the Passover meal, and they're sitting there and they still had bread and they wine because those are key elements in the Passover meal. During the Passover, you drink like 3 cups of wine, and they had bread, like this flat bread, to remember, just cups. It's a long time. It's not like, well, that's why the disciples, after they have the Last Supper, right? Where does Jesus go? Does anybody remember? The Garden of Gethsemane, right? And he takes some of his disciples with him, and he begins to pray, and he's like praying for an hour, and he comes back, and they fall asleep, right? Probably because they've had like a lot of food, and they drank some wine, and they're probably like exhausted. Yeah, it's like how does your family react after Thanksgiving, right? Everybody's got to do nap time. Nap time. So, we talked about baptism, we talked about communion, we've talked about a few rites, like funerals, we talked about marriage. After we get back, we're going to talk about ordination. Tonight, we're going to talk about confirmation. This rite that you're in right now, this is a short lesson.
Did we get small group?
No. But then we're going to do an art project. And I don't want to hear, oh no, I don't want to hear,
Who's David?
Nope.
She's better than my art teacher.
So, we are going to have a discussion about why you are here right now. I know. But we talked about that stuff upstairs. Everybody remember we're having the lock-in on Friday? Next week is potluck pies and Thanksgiving worship. So, what is confirmation? Kids growing up into faith
Good job.
from children to adults. That's a pretty good definition. What else do you got to say about confirmation?
You telling us what the Bible says and then me figuring out what we believe in it.
I like that answer. Yes. Miss Keck,
You're reaffirming your baptism.
reaffirming your baptism. Oh, yes, Brody.
I kind of think it's like restoring your faith, like giving you a better understanding of it.
Okay, I like all those answers. Those are all cumulative. Now, keep that in mind because, especially you 8th graders, if you started to look at your I Believe project, one of the questions is, what is confirmation and what has it been to me? When you have your interview with me, I spend a good chunk of the time talking like, what do you like about confirmation? What did you not like about confirmation? What can we do better in confirmation? So, how would you actually recognize the movie? So, most of you probably have not seen this movie.
Wasn't there only 14 robots? I remember good people.
So,
I think all the good
this
ones are.
is, hold on, I'm going to set this. So those who have not seen the movie, I want to explain what's going to happen because it's not going to make sense otherwise. So, these blue people
Avatar.
live on a different world. Okay? Hold on. Shh. And so, humans go there because there's something they want to get from that planet. The people that live there live very like native, very no technology,
Primitive.
bows and arrows, primitive. But they found a way to transfer people's brains temporarily into their bodies. So just so I know it seems far-fetched, but this guy is one of they grew a body that would link with his mind, and so he can actually go in there and then live with the people because the planet is toxic to people. Like
So that's a human?
there's a human, yes, in his brain. You'll see him in the scenes. That's why I'm explaining it so you're not like, well, what's going on? He is talking about, so he's going and he's living amongst these people. He lives in a world where they travel through the stars, right? And he actually was a soldier and he got crippled, and so he can't walk. And so him being able to go into this body is something amazing for him. Yeah, in the body, yes, he can. But he can't walk in real life because you'll actually see a scene of that. So he's learning what it's like to be part of these people. And so I show this as we're talking about confirmation. Think about what he's saying about what he has to do to learn how to fit into this culture, this different people, and how that relates to what maybe we do in confirmation. Yes, Jason?
There might be a second movie to this.
There is. It's coming out. So,
The language is a pain, but you know, I figure it's like field stripping a weapon. Just repetition, repetition.
Naughty.
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 Stronger.
In theory, calls me scound. It means moron.
This is a very important part of it.
Norm's attitude has improved lately.
But it's not just I'm seeing you in front of me. It's I see into you. I see.
It's good he's back on board, but he thinks I'm a scound
I
too.
understand. So you gotta get this, okay? I gotta run. Okay? Let's go.
I'm pretty getting tougher. I can run farther every day. I can trust my body to know what to do.
Yeah, check it out. Crack.
Every day it's reading the trails, the tracks of the waterhole, tiniest scents and sounds. She's always going on about the flow of energy, the spirits of animals. Really hope this trio of crap isn't on the final.
This isn't just about eye-hand coordination out there, you know. You need to listen to what she says. Try to see the forest through her eyes.
Excuse me, this is my video log here. The Nigerians learn fast or die. Oh, you gotta be kidding me.
So, there's a lot of things in there. I want you to think about it. What was he doing at the beginning? Learning what? How to talk, right? Do we learn the language, a different type of language here?
Yeah.
Right? I have to use the words over and over and over again sometimes so that we begin to understand what they mean. Some of them are hard words, like transubstantiation.
What?
When we're talking about communion, we talk about that. Other words that I talk about that we might go like, oh, I know what that is, but hopefully as we talk about it more and more, it makes more sense, like grace, mercy, love. That's why we talk about those over and over and over again. The things you hear this year, there's probably things, some of you in 6th and 7th grade, 7th and 8th grade, who've heard me say the same thing over and over and over again so that it sinks in. Did he fail a lot?
Yeah.
Yes. Yes.
Fell off a horse,
Yes.
right? There were a lot of times like he did not do it as gracefully as she did,
I
right?
think he did perfect.
You thought he did perfectly, just, and that's fine. Part of the reason we do confirmation, how we do it here, is this is a safe place for you to ask questions, to mess it up, to figure out something different. So that's why we do and talk about confirmation. Because it is hopefully things that will impact the rest of your life moving forward. There are things that I remember as I grew up as a teenager in, sorry, I have a tickle on the back of my throat, go away, that I learned as a person that have grown with me over the years, that I still remember to this day. And so, that is why we do that. And why do we do with teenagers, or almost teenagers in the case of some of you? Because right now, your brains are growing exponentially fast in what you can learn. The things that get imprinted in your brain right now are the things that will translate far longer. You are more gifted right now and over the next 7 or 8 years to learn a new skill than you will be at any other time in your life. You will learn things faster and better right now than you will the rest of your life. That is the amazing part of being your age right now. Do you want to also know the bad part of that? Your brains are wired right now, so the bad habits you pick up right now will also translate into things that you will carry on most likely further on. So that's why it's important for you to ground yourself in good behaviors, good thoughts, good practices right now. Next slide. So, yes, please, if I can just get a cup of water. So back in the time of Martin Luther, back in the 1500s, before that, and we're going to talk a lot about this coming up next, after Christmas, we talk about the Reformation. People didn't learn about the church. They didn't know, they couldn't read the Bible. How many of you have more than one Bible? All of you have at least one Bible. How many of you have more than one Bible? In the time of Martin Luther, a town might have one Bible. The priest of the town might he might even be able to read it if they had it. Because it was only written in Latin before Martin Luther. And so some priests didn't technically know Latin, besides what they could recite. So they might not be able to actually read the Bible. And they might be the only person that can read it. So there was basically, the priest would say, hey, this is what God says. And so people like Lydia couldn't challenge it because she didn't know. There was nobody to say, no point of reference for her to be like, I think you're wrong. They controlled the word. That's a good way to look at it. So Martin Luther says, no, everybody should read the Bible. And so we'll talk about this as cool. At one point he gets kidnapped because they're trying to kill him, and they lock him up in a tower. And he's there, and he writes the New Testament in German. It had never been written in German before. He translates it from the original Greek into German so people can read it. And it was the most, do you know the Bible is the most prolific book of all books, right? There are more copies of the Bible than any other book ever written. For centuries, the Bible was how German people learned how to speak English. In the early colonies, how did people learn to read and write, right? They read the Bible.
Really?
Yes. It was the most common book they had. So many schools used the Bible to teach. So Luther's like, well, hey, we got to teach these young people more about the Bible. We want them to think. He had kids. He had a bunch of kids. And so he wrote what's called the Small Catechism. You all have a copy of that in the back of your little blue book. He also wrote a large catechism, which is basically he said, I didn't use enough words to describe what I wanted to say in the Small Catechism, so the large catechism basically covers the exact same things, he just writes a lot longer. Like the Small Catechism is like this thick, the large catechism is like this thick. He used a lot of words. So Luther changed our way of practicing faith. He put it into the language of the people, first off. He also gave it so it was simple instructions that could be taught without need of interpretation. That's the whole purpose. He designed the Small Catechism so parents could teach their kids about God. And we still use the Small Catechism to this day to teach you all about the Lord's Prayer, the Ten Commandments, the Apostles' Creed. Yes, Cody. You sure can, anytime. So this was revolutionary. Not only was it in the people's language, so everybody could read it, it was simple, so you didn't have to be super educated. He wrote the Small Catechism so teenagers could read it. And he also did it so that it was family-based, so that families, moms and dads, could teach their kids about God. Because how many parents probably went to study theology for multiple years like Martin Luther did? Not many. Not many people went to college back then. Very, very small handful. But that's why he wrote it in the way he wrote it. And we teach it today. It's okay. I'll be back. Tell me when you're ready. When we get to, like I told you, I found all my pictures of my trip to Germany. Did you know that Luther he went to the University of Erfurt, which I think is a great name. University of Erfurt, in Erfurt, Germany. It was one of the top colleges in all of Europe at the time he went there. He went and he got his degree. And then he got his bachelor's degree, and their bachelor's degree was you studied math, science, English, and something like that. There was like 4 topics they covered. And if you mastered those, you got your what they call your bachelor's degree, your basic degree. And then you went and studied the next level of stuff, which was like philosophy and religion and those things. And then you got that, you got your master's degree. And then you could go and you could study law, or you could study medicine, or you could study theology. Those were the 3 things you could study. You could study theology, you could study law, or you could study medicine. Luther went like, I'm going to go study medicine. You're going to go study law, because then you'll be respectable. Maybe you could become a government official, and then not so much. Are you good? So, here's the thing I want you to take most about this conversation about confirmation. It's not conformation. The word conform. C-O-N-F-O-R-M. We use the word confirmation. Like, I believe, Lydia talked about affirmation, which affirmation, to affirm something is to confirm it. Conform, if you look at the definition, says to comply with the rules or standards, to follow a prescribed set of behaviors or belief. That's not what we're wanting to do here. Some people look at church and they're like, it's just a bunch of rules you have to follow, it's things you have to believe, or they're not going to like it. This is why I love being Lutheran. I think being Lutheran is the best thing, best religion, best faith, best denomination in the entire world. Not to say that the others are bad. Don't get me wrong. I just think it is great because Martin Luther, his whole thing is like, you got to ask questions. You got to question it. You got to say, like, is this true? Why do I believe this? It's not just somebody saying, like, the priest up there saying, Ellie, you have to believe this. I want you to memorize this and be able to tell me back word for word what I said. And if you can do that, and you can follow all the steps that I tell you, you're good. That's not what we believe. We believe we've been saved by God and He loves us, and then we should live that out. Confirm, to establish the truth or correctness of something previously uncertain. How many of you at some point in time have had questions about God? Or your church? Or your faith? The whole purpose of this is to confirm, to establish the truth or correctness of something previously uncertain. At some point in your life, if you have not experienced it, you will doubt God. I will guarantee it. You will doubt the church. You will doubt something related to your faith. Huh? It is a big word. I have not met an adult who's never had some questions about God in their life. We're here to teach you how to think about God so that when that happens at some point in time in your life, you're good. Luther said it this way. Confirmation is a public rite, public means we do it in front of other people, of the church preceded by a period of instruction designed to help baptized Christians, y'all, identify with the life and mission of the Christian church. It's not to teach you rules. It's not to teach you what to do to get into heaven. It's to help you identify with. That means for you to feel like you're part of the life and mission of the Christian community. We want you to feel like you belong to the church. I translated it that. I love the way Martin Luther talks about this. It's not about learning rules. It's not about learning what you have to do to get into heaven. Y'all are already guaranteed to go to heaven. You know that, right? You all been baptized, right? You all believe Jesus, right?
Yeah.
You're all going to heaven.
Yay!
You all are guaranteed eternal life. You are going to live forever. Nobody can take that away from you. Now, it's about living your life as part of the church. Doesn't mean you have to go to church every Sunday. Doesn't mean you have to do everything perfect, because I can tell you, you're all a bunch of teenagers. You're human. You're eventually going to become adults, and We all make mistakes. We all screw things up. But we have God's grace and mercy and love to help us through that. So here's our art project.
Yeah.
Dun dun dun!
Bro.
Bro! Do you know why I love art? I am not a super artist. I'm an okay artist.
Painting?
Nope. You have multiple choices of what you would like to do.
Painting.
So,
I'll do none.
What are the
hold on.
Is that a spider?
Yeah.
We have these, and there are two different, there's square ones and rectangular ones. It really doesn't matter, pick which one you want. These are still wrapped. Somebody would have to what? Somebody would have to open these up.
Wow, you take like no steps.
Grab one, take one for yourself, pass it along. So this is the art project we're going to work on. What is faith?
I'm giddy. I'm slow.
What is faith? I put up a bunch of pictures that came to mind when I was thinking about faith. I put up church, the cross, communion, baptism, serving other people, loving people, peace. Okay? Each of you has a different. No, there should be plenty for everybody to get one. You may have to. Some of them you'll have to take off the plastic wrap because I just blocked them. But what I want you to do is, and here's the caveat, don't just draw a stick figure like this is Jesus, okay? I want you to put some effort. I know. Shh, hold on. Hold on, quiet please. I don't expect like Michelangelo's Sistine Chapel, okay? But this is the way I feel about art. Art is the way that our soul expresses what's in it, right?
Yo, we need some more.
You're good.
We need 2 more.
So, we have crayons, we have markers, I have paint. Now, I don't have any paintbrushes, you're gonna have to finger paint, which I think is awesome. So, you can mix, you can match, you can do whatever. But, here's the caveat, here's the warning. When you're done with your picture, I'm going to take a picture of you and your piece of art.
Oh, no.
How does that relate to your faith? No. It needs to answer the question, what is faith? And I want you to, put out what it means to you.
I don't know.
Well, there's lots of pictures. Are those pictures related to faith?
Oh, give me those.
All right.
Okay, then just draw me else.
No, you can, whatever you want, related to your faith. You can if you want, yes. It's up to you. I put those up as inspiration. No, you can do one. Or you can do 2. That's a stand, so you can stand up.
Roland, I think you need to keep going. Actually, no, wait, that's not the right one. Pass it back. Pass it back.
And I can literally stand like that when you're done.
Here, have it done.
All right, all of the pens, markers, there's little plates if you want some paint. Don't go crazy with the paint, people. Guys, just grab what you need and take it with you, not the whole thing.
Oh,
Share
over
it.
here, bro.
Leave it over here, grab what you need out of it, and share. Not carrying around with you. You could literally just grab them. Yep.
Like go back so that we can finish copying it down.
Yeah, what you doing?
Can I go back so I can finish copying it down?
Yes. That's literally, in your small catechism, that's what it says there when you but I don't want like a little line in a circle will be done in like 2 seconds. Like, take some time, think about it, translate it, put it out there. Now remember, okay, if you're using one of the square ones, there's an actual bottom, because they will stand. So like,
I just get it, bro.
that's the bottom.
I'm not
See, it's just stand like that.
I'm riding forward. What are you doing?
Oh, wait, yeah. Hold on. What are you doing?
I don't know, bro. Yes, this is pretty good.
I'm gonna go over with the I got keys, stats, lab.
This is pretty good.
Wait, a Crayola. Students can't. I know, but I can. Yeah, maybe. No.
Bro, this black really be looking like blue.
It does though, look. That's brown.
Look at the black.
I need a black marker.
Color makes her. That's what my art teacher said, bro. She said you should make color.
Yes, most likely.
She said 23.
Oh. You should be the
Yeah.
first size.
There might be some in this drawer.
Dude, my size is like 80. It is such a ball.
I didn't even say I cannot say but you like teacher and stuff.
Are you a planner? Are you sketching it for? Yeah, that's what I would do too.
That's the way I like to my passion. Look at my girl. It's good. Yeah. You should know that. I know around that. Oh. That's everything. Turn it back. Oh, turn it back. They gotta know how to do it.
Yeah, don't
Turn it back.
If you're gonna experience the pain
Yeah,
of being
very young. Why you put yourself on fire?
Oh, stop pushing his keyboard.
Alright.
Keyboard.